The Las Vegas Raiders have made a surprising move by firing Tom Tesco today, and it's raised a lot of questions. The team has been in an interesting position lately, especially after they let go of Antonio Pierce just a few days ago, a decision that, honestly, made a lot of sense. But today's firing of Tom Tesco, that's something I don't entirely agree with, and I'll explain why as we dive into this discussion. Earlier today, reports from Ian Rappaport and the Raiders themselves confirmed that Tom Tesco has officially been let go. What's especially surprising about this move is that Tom Tesco was behind one of the Raiders' best drafts in years. If we look back at the past 15 years, only a couple of draft classes really stand out as excellent, and this one, led by Tesco, is certainly one of them. One of the key players from that draft is Brock Bowers, a pick I wasn't initially on board with. But looking back, it's clear that Bowers is a superstar in the making. However, the pick that really caught my attention was Paris Johnson. From the start, I loved this pick, and I was honestly fine with the idea of taking him with the 13th overall pick. But when the Raiders snagged him in the second round, that was fantastic value, and it showed how well Tesco and the team were working the draft. Additionally, there's Christian Wilkins, who showed a lot of promise before getting injured. Tom Tesco helped bring in solid talent, and he did a great job of keeping key players from last year while avoiding giving out big contracts before the season. All in all, while some decisions may have been questioned, it's hard to overlook the positive impact Tesco had on the team's roster and their future. The situation with Tom Tesco has certainly raised a lot of questions, and while I don't fully agree with the Raiders' decision to let him go, I do understand it. Looking at the bigger picture, I think there's a clear reason why they made this move, and it's actually pretty straightforward when you think about it. Tom Tesco was a solid general manager. He handled the draft well and brought in some great talent. However, sometimes, in order to build a successful team, you need to make sure your head coach and general manager are on the same page. It's not just about having a good GM, but also about giving the coach a sense of control over the roster, making them feel confident that they'll have time and authority to improve the team. I believe this is what the Raiders are aiming for by making this change now. They're setting the stage for a new head coach to really have a say in how the roster is built moving forward. Let's be honest, the Raiders' job right now isn't the most attractive for any potential head coach. Their offensive line is still a work in progress, and while Colton Miller is a solid tackle, he's been dealing with injuries for the past few seasons, missing parts of each year. He also had a rough start to this season after missing all of training camp. But the biggest issue for the Raiders is their lack of a reliable quarterback. The upcoming draft class doesn't seem promising in that area either, which leaves the Raiders in a tricky position when it comes to building a strong offense. So, in the end, it makes sense why the Raiders might want to reset their approach with a fresh start at the top. When you consider all of these factors, it's clear that bringing in Ben Johnson as head coach might not have been appealing with Tom Tesco still in place. However, there's a unique opportunity the Raiders can offer that no other team can. They can tell Ben Johnson, "We're letting go of Tom Tesco, and we're doing it because we want you to have full control over the decisions here." By firing Tesco, they're essentially giving Johnson the chance to bring in a familiar face for the general manager position, someone he's comfortable with, whether it's Aaron Glenn or another member of the Detroit Lions front office or personnel team. This could be a huge selling point for Johnson, especially since he'll know that the roster decisions will be made with his input in mind. It's not just about having a GM, it's about working with someone who shares his vision and can build the team he wants. If the Raiders go this route, it could give them a real shot at landing a coach like Johnson, who might otherwise hesitate to join a team without that kind of power. It's also worth noting that head coaches often prefer to work with familiar people, especially when they know their input will be valued. We don't really know the dynamics between Tom Tesco and the Raiders' head coach, and if Tesco has been used to doing things his way, it might have made the relationship more difficult. A new GM with a fresh perspective chosen by Ben Johnson could lead to a smoother collaboration and ultimately help build a stronger team. For Johnson, having that control and trust in the front office could be the key to making the Raiders' job more appealing. The Raiders are also set to meet with Ben Johnson this Friday, and while the meeting is not 100% confirmed, reports from Adam Schefter and Jordan Schultz have pointed to it happening. Ben Johnson is definitely the hot name in coaching circles right now, and if I had to bet, I'd say he's at the very top of the Raiders list. That being said, it's still not a done deal. There are factors that need to work out for both sides, and it's important to consider whether this is the right fit for Johnson as well. One thing we can't ignore is how good Ben Johnson is as a play caller. I always like to tell this story because it really shows what kind of impact he can have. When Dan Campbell first took over as head coach of the Detroit Lions, the team was struggling badly with a record that was hard to look at. Lions fans were calling for Campbell's job, but Campbell made a bold move. He fired offensive coordinator Anthony Lynn and promoted the team's pass game coordinator, who was virtually unknown at the time. That was Ben Johnson. This decision paid off big time. The Lions went on a winning streak, winning several of their final games of the season. They ended the year strong, and when they entered the next season, Johnson was the full-time offensive coordinator. His ability to turn things around so quickly spoke volumes about his coaching ability, and it's a big reason why he's now one of the top candidates for head coaching jobs. It shows that he can handle pressure, make tough decisions, and get results, which makes him an intriguing option for the Raiders as they look to rebuild and move forward. The impact of Ben Johnson's promotion to offensive coordinator in Detroit cannot be overstated. Dan Campbell, who was struggling in his first year, essentially bought himself another year with that move. Johnson turned the offense around and the Lions went on a winning streak, which helped Campbell keep his job. Over time, Johnson's success as a play caller helped establish him as one of the best coordinators in the NFL. And now, the Lions have one of the top offenses in the league. Because of that, Ben Johnson is often credited with helping save Campbell's tenure as head coach. While we can't know for sure how things would have gone if Johnson hadn't stepped in, there's a good chance that if he eventually leaves, Campbell's success may take a hit. We might even see Campbell available for hire again in a few years. History and statistics suggest that's a possibility. But for now, the Raiders are meeting with Johnson, and if I were Mark Davis, I'd be writing him a check for whatever he wants. He's the guy I'd hire right now. Of course, Ben Johnson isn't the only option the Raiders are considering. They've reportedly lined up meetings with other coaches, particularly from offensive backgrounds. One name that's come up is the Baltimore Ravens offensive coordinator, though it's still unclear whether that meeting will take place. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers offensive coordinator is another name being mentioned. Personally, I'm open to the Raiders hiring anyone who can bring real coaching ability to the table. However, I believe they need a coach who can call plays, either offensive or defensive, and do it at an elite level. The Raiders can't afford to settle for a coach who isn't proven in that area. Ideally, I'd love someone who can take charge of the offense right away, and Ben Johnson definitely fits that bill. Let's dive into Ben Johnson's situation a bit more. He's worked with one of the best offensive lines in the NFL, and his roster is stacked with talent. Johnson has two great wide receivers, an excellent running back, and a top-tier tight end. He's managed to put all those pieces together and create one of the most potent offenses in the league. But here's the thing, no situation is ever exactly the same, and even the best coaches can struggle in different environments. So while Johnson's success in Detroit is undeniable, it's still unclear how he'd fare with a new team and a different set of challenges. The Raiders are in a tricky spot, especially with the recent firings of both Tom Tesco and Antonio Pierce. I agree with the decision to part ways with Pierce, but I'm not as convinced that firing Tesco was the right move. However, one thing is clear. The Raiders still have a lot of work to do. They need to find a quarterback, and that's no easy task. It's not just a matter of picking someone from this draft class and calling it a day. A lot of people are talking about Shatter Sanders as a potential first-round pick, but in my opinion, he's much more likely to be a third-round pick than a top-tier selection. And it's not just my personal take. Many people around the NFL share the same view. Sanders is being overhyped, and it's starting to look like the same pattern we've seen in recent years. We've seen quarterbacks like Will Levis, Hendon Hooker, and Dwayne Haskins get a lot of attention before ultimately falling lower in the draft than expected. The truth is, these players didn't live up to the early hype, and teams didn't view them as top picks. Sanders could face a similar fate, so the Raiders have to be careful about how they approach the quarterback position in this draft. Shatter Sanders, despite the hype, is not being valued as highly as many think. The reality is, this quarterback class is lacking in top-tier talent. The only quarterback likely to go in the first round is Cam Ward, and he's expected to land with the Tennessee Titans. Beyond that, it's unclear if any other quarterbacks will be taken in the first round. There will likely be teams that still consider drafting a quarterback early, and we might see Shatter Sanders or Jalen Milroe get selected, but nothing is guaranteed at this point. It's important to remember that drafting a rookie quarterback is always a gamble. Even if you take someone like J.J. McCarthy or Bo Nix, there's no certainty they'll pan out. The difference, though, is that these quarterbacks have proven themselves on tape. They've shown they can do all the little things right. handling pressure, using good footwork, climbing the pocket when needed, and running an offense. They played within the structure of their teams and displayed solid decision-making. When we look at quarterbacks like Shatter Sanders, Jalen Milroe, and Jackson Dart, there are concerns. For example, Sanders has some areas where he struggles, particularly with the finer details of quarterback play. Milroe has similar issues, and Jackson Dart, who's been getting a lot of buzz lately, has his own set of questions. Interestingly, I spoke with someone recently who didn't think Dart would go in the top 5 or 6 rounds, yet some are suggesting the Raiders should target him high in the draft. As the draft approaches, the quarterback hype will intensify, but it's crucial to assess which of these players can truly thrive at the next level. It's still too early to say for sure who will stand out, but one thing's certain. The Raiders have to be very careful with their quarterback decision. As the draft and coaching decisions unfold, it's clear that the Raiders need to make some crucial moves, especially when it comes to finding their quarterback. If they bring in a coach like Ben Johnson, it's likely they'll look for a veteran quarterback, rather than relying on a rookie. Alternatively, they might decide to stick with the 2 quarterbacks they already have. The truth is, there's a system in place that could help a guy like Aiden O'Connell succeed, and that system looks a lot like what the Detroit Lions are running right now. Jared Goff and Aiden O'Connell share similar mobility, and if Ben Johnson could get Goff to play at a high level, there's a real chance he could do the same with O'Connell. However, if the Raiders bring in Ben Johnson, they need to commit to him for the long term. They can't just give him 1 or 2 seasons and expect immediate success. The Raiders should give him a minimum of 3 years, even if the team struggles at first. The same goes for whoever they bring in as the general manager. The Raiders need stability. Constantly firing coaches and GMs doesn't lead to long-term success. To truly build something, the team needs to let a smart GM implement his vision and give the head coach time to develop the roster. When Tom Tesco was brought in, I was optimistic. He had 11 years of experience as a general manager, and I believed he could turn things around. Even though he had some failures with the Chargers, he was able to reflect on past draft picks and learn from them. I thought he could bring that experience and knowledge to the Raiders and build a strong foundation. But now, with the team moving in a different direction, it's clear that the Raiders need to stick with a long-term plan, and that means giving both the head coach and the GM the time they need to implement their strategies. Tom Tesco's experience as a general manager is valuable because it comes from real-world decisions and mistakes. Those types of lessons can't be gained without actually going through the process, and unfortunately, most general managers don't get the chance to do that. Many start as assistants or in smaller roles, and by the time they reach the top, they're often only given one shot at running a team. Tom Tesco had that opportunity with the Raiders, but it's possible he won't get another chance at being a general manager again. While he did have a great draft last year, which could help him find another role in the future, the reality is that the majority of GMs only get one opportunity to prove themselves. Looking at someone like Dave Ziegler or Mike Mayock, it's likely that neither will get another shot as a GM after their time with the Raiders. That's how hard the job is, and it's why the Raiders need to stay consistent with their leadership. Constant turnover and firing coaches and GMs after just a couple of years isn't the path to success. The Raiders need to stick with the right people and allow them the time and space to build something lasting. One other thing to consider is the Tom Brady effect. There have been rumors about Bill Belichick potentially coming in as the general manager, which could explain part of why the Raiders moved on from Tom Tesco. Belichick, however, has made it clear he wants to be in full control, and I don't think he's leaving North Carolina anytime soon. It's hard to see him leaving a college program like the one he has now to return to the NFL, especially when he could have stayed in the league if he truly wanted to. The whole situation around Belichick is intriguing, but to me, it doesn't make a lot of sense for him to leave his current position for another NFL job. The Raiders need a long-term solution, and they should focus on consistency rather than jumping at every new rumor or opportunity. At this point in Bill Belichick's career, it seems unlikely that he'll return to the NFL in a way that will enhance his legacy. His best years were spent with Tom Brady, and trying to find another quarterback to replicate that success seems almost impossible. Even if he spends another 10 years in the NFL, the chances of him finding the right quarterback and pairing him perfectly with the defense seem slim. On the other hand, college football could be a better fit for Belichick at this stage. College allows a coach to build a program over 4 years, and it's easier to bring in new talent to shape the team. While I don't think Belichick will ever come to the Raiders, it does make more sense for him to stay in college football, where he has more control and flexibility. As for the Raiders, one person who could have a positive impact going forward is Tom Brady. With the ownership decisions being made by Mark Davis, it might be time for Brady to step in and offer more input. At this point, it seems like the Raiders could use a steady hand to help guide them, and Brady, with his experience and knowledge, could be the person to do that. I would love to see him become more involved in the decision-making process. On a personal note, some of you have been wondering why I haven't been posting as much or covering the news lately. Well, I'm currently away working as a scout for the Hula Bowl, which has been a busy but exciting experience. I've been here since Sunday, and I'll be here until Saturday after the game. My schedule has been packed, up at 6:30 a.m. and working until 10 or 11 p.m. every day. It's been exhausting, but also incredibly rewarding. So, I apologize for the delay in content, but I'll be back to posting regularly by Sunday or Monday next week. Thanks for your patience, and as always, let me know what you think in the comments below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next video.